In 1999, I first saw a TV show called Ed, Edd and Eddy. It quickly won me over with its incredibly goofy humour. I loved it, my mother hated it. In 2019, I dedicated an episode of Video Memories to this show. It's still, as of today, my favourite TV show, and that Video Memories episode is also one of my favourites, despite what the view count says. If you want to know my thorough views on this cartoon, check that episode out. Now, early in the review, I talked about the home media releases this series has on offer. There weren't that many. Rewinding back to 1999, the only TV show I owned was Thomas & Friends, and even then, I believe I owned at most 7 VHS tapes. Through the years, I collect shows like, to name a few, Tom and Jerry, Family Guy, Rescue Me, I suppose you could count Looney Tunes in this, The Simpsons, and... yeah, I suppose this shit counts. Oh yeah, I'm going there, Pokemon sucks. But despite its popularity, one show never got a complete series DVD set beyond the first 2 seasons, 3 if you count that one in Thailand, and 2 compilation DVDs, one of which I own. Then, in 2022, the news hit the internet. The Eds were finally getting a complete series box set on DVD. Sure, the artwork looks like a copy and paste job, but the consensus between Ed, Edd and Eddy fans were along the lines of, "Holy fucking shit, I need to get this!" I went to Amazon and immediately placed a pre-order. Granted, it was $81 because I had to import it, but surely it's worth the money. Right? About 2 weeks later, details began to be revealed. The generic cover art was authentic, and the back cover was revealed. The back revealed that all 66 episodes of this Cartoon Network show were included. Now, I've marathoned this show enough times to know that this number is incorrect. The show has 69 episodes and a movie. This had me worried. I didn't want to spend a fortune on a DVD set of my favourite childhood cartoon if it wasn't a complete set, despite being advertised as complete. I cancelled my pre-order pending any reviews that confirm my suspicions. Maybe everything's fine. My wife's Courage the Cowardly Dog collection turned out fine. That had every episode and at an efficient price. And that brings us to today. I now own this complete series box set for Ed, Edd and Eddy. Was it worth it? Let's find out.
And the first sequence and fade to black.
Let's start from the outside and work our way in. The artwork looks pretty basic. It's just the Eds in a shopping cart with a blue background, but whatever, it works. The title, however, looks like a sticker, and it's very jarring with that white border. Even the original releases for the first 2 seasons had a better looking title. On that note, the first 2 season releases were repackaged for this DVD set, right down to the menus and quite possibly the DVD controls. Season 1 has something I've never noticed with a TV show released on DVD. The chapter skip only allows you to skip forward or back in increments of 22 minutes rather than allowing you to skip individual segments or even the opening credits. I have never seen that before. My wife's copy of Courage the Cowardly Dog allows episode skips from the start, and that was released a few years prior to this. Let me compare it to something I own. Let's take an average Family Guy release.
Well, see, I got drunk and then...
Granted, each episode is 22 minutes long, double the length of an average Ed, Edd and Eddy episode, but these DVDs allow you to chapter skip multiple times per episode. Hell, even basic DVD recordings I made nearly 15 years ago allow you to skip ahead 10 minutes. It's not a massive issue in the end, as it was fixed for Season 2. As I mentioned, the first 2 seasons were repackaged for the complete series, right down to the menus, and when it comes to presentation, I think the main menus and episode selection menus look good, perfectly fine for a TV show like this. The bonus features also carried over, so if you like to see vintage interviews with Danny Antonucci or tutorials on how to draw a character from the show, you're good to go. When we jump to seasons 3 through 5, since there's nothing to repackage, they created a brand new set of menus, and this is what we get. The cover art for the main menu with basic text over a blue background. It's as bland as you can possibly get. This is on par with the god-awful menus I complained about in episode 32, The Very Best of Thomas and Friends. But you know what? Forget all that. Let's rip off the band-aids and focus on the main thing, the reason you're buying this set.
Jumpin' Geronimo! What'd you do that for?
As the back of the case promotes, this contains 66 episodes from 5 seasons across 10 discs. 13 episodes each from the first 4 seasons, 12 from season 5, the one episode that was made for season 6, and the special crossover episode, The Eds Are Coming. For those of you keeping score, that's 65 normal episodes out of 65, and 1 special episode out of 4. The 3 missing episodes are Jingle Jingle Jangle, Hanky Panky Hullabaloo, and Boo Haw Haw, as well as the finale movie, The Big Picture Show. Even when this set was announced, I knew the movie wouldn't be included, and I was happy to buy that separately one day, preferably on Blu-ray. But to include 1 special episode and not the remaining 3 confused a number of fans, myself included. This is going to be the deal breaker for some people. Yes, the set has 95% of the series content. Yes, the episodes all look good, albeit not in HD. But being happy with the set will depend on whether or not you care about missing those 3 episodes. I'm happy I own every main episode after 20 plus years, but at the same time, the fans complaining about the complete series not actually being complete have every right to be pissed off. As much as I'd love to rate it higher, Ed, Edd and Eddy, the complete series, gets a 3 out of 5. I love what it has, but it's missing episodes, the title is misleading, the presentation is awful, and the set is horrifically overpriced. This is clearly a collection that was put together with minimal effort, and it could do so much better. This is the kind of DVD set that may seem good right now, but the second something comes out with all 69 episodes, no one will give 2 shits about this one. I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but what the fuck is the point in it being called the complete series if it doesn't include every—
End it! Now, dork!
Okay. Okay, let's talk Disney. We're going to count some movies. My collection started with The Aristocats, The Lion King, and Fantasia. My mom's parents had Jungle Book, and Lady and the Tramp. My dad's parents had Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Bambi, The Fox and the Hound, and a movie I own a lot of copies of, Pinocchio. I shit you not, I own 5 copies of this film. The only thing that can compete with this is Back to the Future. Anyway, my cousin owned Aladdin. One time when I was staying over at someone's house, I watched Beauty and the Beast. I don't remember whose house it was, but they had this on VHS. I once borrowed Alice in Wonderland from a friend and never returned it. I would also come into ownership of 101 Dalmatians, Peter Pan, Hercules, Oliver and Company, and The Emperor's New Groove. And that's just VHS. That's 17 movies, and we haven't even looked at DVD yet. The first thing I owned on DVD was Toy Story 2. Technically it's Pixar and not Walt Disney Animation Studios, so it doesn't count. But I had to mention it. It's my favourite animated movie and a special movie overall for me. I did a review. You should check it out. When it comes to Disney DVD, yeah, remember that bit? The first movie that comes to mind is Lilo and Stitch. This movie was a big deal for me, even before the TV show, and it's still in my top 5 for Disney. And from there actually wasn't much. I finally got my hands on Pocahontas. I was told I briefly owned it on VHS as a kid, but I didn't like it. Oh well. I had The Little Mermaid and Robin Hood at one point. I still own Wreck-It Ralph and Zootropolis. Add in the movies my wife owns, and we have Tarzan, The Princess and the Frog, Brother Bear, Tangled, Big Hero 6, and Moana. That's a lot of Disney. Believe me, if you grew up in the 90s, it was mandatory that you owned at least one Disney movie on VHS. Thomas and Friends, Pokemon, Cartoon Network, that stuff is unimportant. You had to own Disney. Then Disney Plus joins the fight, and now you have access to almost every major feature film they ever made, not to mention all those TV shows you grew up on. Now at your disposal, wherever you want, whenever you want, just like those old Video Now ads. Remember those hunks of garbage? Now, you'd think with the advent of Disney Plus, that would spell the end for home media when it comes to the wonderful world. But in 2022, I discovered something truly special. One day, while having a casual browse of eBay, I found this. It claimed to be a collection of 57 animated Disney films. Something of this magnitude seemed too good to be true, and dear God, look at those prices! Okay, maybe if I look on Amazon it'll be cheaper. Oh! That isn't much better. Why 57 movies anyway? That's such a random number. For any hardcore Disney lover, this is a collection that would leave them set for life. But it's just so expensive. On average, these things cost between 200 and 300 new, sometimes even more. Just buying the thing is a massive commitment. You think collecting The Simpsons or Pokemon is dedication? That's nothing. This is dedication. Needless to say, the Amazon listings for this thing kept pulling me back. It was calling to me. One day, I saw something. They had one in acceptable condition. Large cosmetic damage on the item case, missing shrink wrap, activation codes for bonus online content may be missing or expired. All it would cost me is £127, just over half the average retail price. This was a big decision, more than £100, and if the front cover is butchered, who's to say the discs aren't also damaged? I took the chance. I decided to buy it. If it was awful, I could always return it. The next day, it arrived. The moment of truth. The fact that I still have it hints to how good the thing is, but let's keep the suspense going for story convenience. Sure enough, the outer cover was torn severely, and there was masking tape all over the cover and the shell underneath. This thing looks like it had lost a fight in a boxing match. Inside the torn cover is a book and a giant folder of discs. Let's start with the book. What we have is a fascinating, albeit unnecessary, tribute to Walt Disney Animation Studios. There's a timeline chronicling the history of the studio, beginning with Walt Disney working for a Kansas City newspaper, the creation of the Laugh-O-Grams, the creation of Oswald and Mickey, the first animated feature film, the opening of Disneyland. If there was an important Disney-related event between 1920 and 2020, chances are it's on this timeline. There are sections on Walt Disney himself, the creation of Mickey Mouse, and bits on various animated films that could pass for museum exhibits. It's a terrific read. This normally comes included with the movie set, but if you're interested primarily in the book, it's an abridgment of the Disney Book, a celebration of the world of Disney. A much more thorough book, while this one only focuses on animated feature films included in the set. Either way, both are incredible. Now, the main event. The feature presentation, you might say. If you're a fan of animated Disney films, this is the collection for you. As the front cover says, this big motherfucker of a folder contains 57 animated films from 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, all the way up to 2019's Frozen 2, most of them in glorious HD. If you love movies from the first 63 years of Walt Disney Animation Studios, you're good to go. I say that specifically because there are a few things post-2000 to take note of. This collection, at least the UK version, does not include Dinosaur from 2000 or Winnie the Pooh from 2011, but does include The Wild from 2006, which wasn't actually made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. So in a weird sense of deja vu, this complete collection is not actually complete. Thankfully, it's not as bad as this thing. Sure, we may have 2 movies missing, but for how much there is on offer in this collection, it's easily worth however much money you spend on it. Also of note, while there may be 57 films in this set, only 52 of them are on Blu-ray. We have 4 anthology films from the 1940s that come on standard DVDs, as does The Black Cauldron from 1985. You come close to bankrupting a company just once, and they disregard you for the next 36 years.
What you are about to see, you must never reveal to anyone.
Yeah, I first heard about this movie from the opening trailers to Oliver & Company. It took them 13 years to release this one. And if anyone's wondering, I didn't pick it up, I never saw it until I got this thing, and I didn't like it. Oh well. So if you can live with a couple absent movies and a few non-high-def discs, I think you're good to go. You even get some historical throwback with the original theatrical posters. Granted, I would have loved to have had physical posters similar to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but this is pretty nice too. As for the discs, you get what you'd expect. High-quality prints of your favourite childhood movies with hopefully some good presentation. Just look at 101 Dalmatians. This is how you make a great menu, unlike the garbage I talked about in the last review. Small side note, just after that review came out, I bought the Blumhouse Halloween trilogy on Blu-ray. Great movies, but this set not only has crappy menus, a major pet peeve of mine, but perhaps the worst discs in my entire collection. The same artwork on all 3 discs, with no proper titles to distinguish which discs are which. Oh wait, there are titles, on the outer edge of each disc. When it comes to physical media, this is a short-sighted person's worst nightmare. But forget about that, let's focus on the positives. Great Disney movies with hopefully great presentation, maybe some fun bonus features too, maybe some you've never seen before. Here's an example. I checked out the disc for Wreck-It Ralph, and I learned they actually made fake commercials for the arcade games featured in the movie. I had no idea this was even a thing. That is a really nice touch.
Sugar Rush Speedway. Play the sweet new game only at Litwax Arcade on Route 83, offering 4 free quarters on your birthday. Proof of birthday required.
Speaking of Wreck-It Ralph, I should also mention there is a very similar collection to this, released 2 years prior. The only major difference here is that this set contains 55 movies rather than 57. And beyond the exclusion of Ralph Breaks the Internet, which is still in theatres, and Frozen 2, which didn't exist at the time, the collection is exactly the same as this. You still get a white case with the same still frame from Steamboat Willie, you get the same discs, you still get the book, and if you're in the UK, you still get The Wild instead of Dinosaur and Winnie the Pooh. Which version you get depends on how much you care about those 2 movies. So, 57 animated films, all of them with great artwork, almost all of them in high definition in a super sturdy case with some artistic history and a great book to boot. What do we give this out of 5? Ha! What a stupid question. Sure, it may have a few minor problems, but the positives easily outweigh the negatives, and hey, it doesn't have to be perfect to be great. With this collection, I'll never need to buy Disney again. On digital. I never thought I'd be talking about that thing again. I covered the service back in episode 46, but for a quick recap, it was the first digital terrestrial TV service in the world. It had numerous problems ranging from weak signals to piracy, but if you're a kid looking for some Cartoon Network, it looks and works perfectly fine. It's an excellent example of something nostalgic that can also be garbage. Unless you're my wife, in which case you're looking at Space Jam. If I was lucky enough to have access to the main TV instead of being stuck with a limited supply of VHS tapes, more than likely I was watching Cartoon Network. It worked for kids. I've made that clear dozens of times. So let's talk about something else. 3 channels after the network on Channel 30 was Granada Plus. You'd see shows like Emmerdale, Cagney and Lacey, Minder, Cherry and June, standard dramas, soaps and sitcoms from the 60s to the 90s. For British viewers, it was discount UK Gold. I was 7 years old, so logically this channel would serve as much purpose to me as BBC Knowledge or something like Eurosport. But there was one show I used to watch on Granada.
The Dukes of Hazzard is on Plus.
You mean Bo and Luke Duke?
Come and pay homage to the Dukes of Hazzard weekdays at 5 on Plus.
The Dukes of Hazzard, the classic show featuring Bo and Luke Duke and their adventures protecting Hazzard County from the likes of Boss Hogg, Sheriff Roscoe Coltrane, and their many nefarious schemes. A show with very shaky beginnings that later became a family-friendly staple for the first half of the 80s. I wasn't born into this world until 1993, so naturally I missed the show during its heyday. But hey, it aired in the UK pretty early, and when I caught it on Granada Plus, probably after an airing of Cagney and Lacey, one of my mum's favourites to this very day, I thought it was a fun show. Sure, as a kid, I barely understood what the episode plots were, but the characters were good, the action sequences were exciting, and the General Lee was cool as shit. All that being said, I can't say I was anything more than a casual viewer. The show didn't have the best time slot for me, and if I was lucky enough to be given the power of the TV remote, take a guess what I'd go first. I enjoyed the show, but I couldn't tell you about the majority of the stories or about certain characters that appeared in one specific episode. Even when our TV services were upgraded and I was given complete access to ON, I doubt I was sitting down to watch The Dukes every night. If anything, I was lucky if I saw it once a week. But hey, even if I didn't consistently watch on the level of talking trains or Japanese monsters kept in minuscule capsules, I remained a fan of the Dukes. I even owned a few DVD sets in later years. Sure, the show did feel a bit dated in places, but it was still a decent way of killing a few hours. There was one more thing though. Portugal, summer 2005. Yep, we're back here again. We're at Forum Algarve, a large shopping centre in the middle of Faro. The same shopping centre where I picked up a set of Looney Tunes DVDs only the previous year. A lot of stuff happened here. I actually completed the collection recently. Excellent stuff. These are still my favourite DVDs in my collection. The 5-star rating stands. Anyway, Forum Algarve has a movie theatre, Cinema Nosh. What the Nosh stands for, I don't know.
Bem-vindo ao mundo digital dos cinemas Nós.
That summer, this theatre was showing a new movie I didn't even know existed. Oh shit. Well, I'm 12 years old, my mother wants to do some shopping, this place is showing the movie in English. This is an excellent place to leave me for an hour or two. I went, I saw the movie, and the theatre was completely empty the entire film. Having an entire cinema room to yourself is pretty sweet, especially in the childhood years. Either way, the movie was a lot of fun, and I immediately snatched it up on DVD. I thought the movie was excellent. That being said, I was 12 years old and I had terrible taste. Many lovers of the TV show have called the movie atrocious garbage. And to be fair, they're not wrong, the movie is terrible, but I don't think it's one of the worst movies ever made. Let's have a look at it. For those who haven't seen this masterpiece, here's a recap. Bo and Luke deliver moonshine. Luke tries to get laid. Bo and Luke get chased. Jump. Title sequence. Bo and Luke crash into tractors and shit. Bar fight. Duke Farm gets seized. Bo and Luke investigate Boss Hogg. They find a safe. Jackass stunt sequence. They take the safe to conspiracy friend. Safe go boom. Weird container inside. Dukes go to Atlanta. Dukes find old girlfriend with Australian roommate. Weird container contains coal. Boss Hogg plans to mine Hazzard. Bo and Luke get arrested. Bo and Luke break free. Big car chase. Duke boys return to Hazzard. Jesse and family friend get rescued. Another car chase. Plan B. Bo enters big race with police. Moonshine explodes. Bo wins race. Everyone follows him to the courthouse. Judge dismisses mining order. Boss Hogg loses. That's about it. It's a special movie. Like I said, most fans of the TV show consider the movie to be an insult, and they're not necessarily wrong. The stunt work is pretty good, the car chase scenes are entertaining, but the movie is trying way too hard to be crude and edgy. The original show was seen as family friendly, and the humour here is mostly juvenile and vulgar. The plot is a bit extreme for Boss Hogg standards, and the dialogue feels like it was written by a group of teenagers.
I don't know how we're gonna pay you back, Cody.
Well, a BJ from Daisy be within the realm of possibility.
Not gonna happen.
The biggest offence to the movie has to be the casting. David Koechner and Michael Weston are okay as Cooter and Enos. Jessica Simpson is passable as Daisy, even though she doesn't get to do much beyond, well, that. And Burt Reynolds is fine despite looking nothing like his character from the show. On the other hand, Bo and Luke are nothing like their TV counterparts. MC Gainey is a great actor, I loved him in Con Air, but he plays Roscoe way too seriously. Roscoe was briefly serious in the first season of the show, but by season 2 he became the bumbling comic relief the character is known for.
Boss, what's a 5-letter word for dunce?
R-O-S-C-O.
Ooh, that fits.
The biggest offender here is Willie Nelson as Uncle Jesse. In the TV show, Jesse acts as the traditional father figure to Bo, Luke and Daisy, always on hand to offer support and wisdom whenever they need it. In the movie, Jesse is a hippie smartmouth, always cracking jokes, such as,
"You know what you get when you cross a donkey with an onion? No! You get a piece of ass that'll bring a tear to your eye." Woo!
Beyond that, there's not much to say. If you grew up on and loved the show, you will more than likely hate this movie, and I wouldn't blame you. Speaking as a casual viewer of the show, I don't think it's the worst movie ever made. It's watchable garbage at best. Normally, the film would warrant a 1-star rating, but if I'm being honest, I really enjoyed the last 20 minutes of the movie. When Bo enters the Hazzard Road rally in the middle of a police chase, the movie actually picks up for a bit. For 10 minutes from the start of the race to when Bo and Luke arrive at the courthouse, the movie is actually fun and exciting, barring Jesse's awful dialogue. So you know what? I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. 2 stars, and it's lucky to be getting that. Watch this movie if and only if you're in the mood to watch garbage. If you can put aside the fact that the movie is atrocious compared to the TV show, you won't make it. I want to take you back to before the days of Netflix or Disney Plus. Before the days of YouTube. Even before the days where you could pause and even rewind live television. Let's go back to the days when VCRs were a lifesaver when it came to watching your favourite TV shows. Someone born after the 1990s might assume the primary function of these machines would be to indulge in your small, maybe large collection of videocassettes. Movies, TV shows, maybe some sort of miscellaneous promotional content you'd watch maybe once or twice and then completely forget about. But as it turns out, these machines were made primarily to timeshift, to record televised content to be watched at a later time. Back in the 70s, these things were expensive, but incredibly helpful when you learned how they work. In the 90s, I had no idea how these things worked, but as long as the machine was connected to the TV correctly, all I'd have to do is stick a VHS tape inside the machine and press record. If all went according to plan, I'd have a recording of Cartoon Network I could save forever.
You're watching a super chunk of Courage the Cowardly Dog.
On the surface, all would look fine, especially after the tape is ejected. But in reality, taping stuff from TV, especially in analog times, was a pain in the ass. There were numerous things that could happen when recording TV, and I'm going to use my collection of tapes to highlight some of those issues. It would all start one of three ways. If you're a kid and you watch some cartoons before school, you know they're on every single day, so you would know whether or not to give up a tape for them. That's an easy one. This could also apply to something you'd watch at night. Maybe your favourite TV channel has something that runs for 2 hours every night of the week. It's all scheduled and nearly consistent. If you have a tape, you're good to go. Otherwise, there's always tomorrow. Then there's route number the second, which has you looking through the TV guide and you find something you're interested in. A TV guide would normally cover an entire week, so you might have a head start in preparation. Or you see an advert on TV that would alert you to something worth saving. Trouble is, it may be a few days from now, or it could be starting in 5 minutes, in which case you need to hurry up and find a tape.
The movie premiere of Tweety's High-Flying Adventure. Next, on Boomerang.
That's all the easy part, but now comes time to actually record something. And here's where you face a multitude of issues. You know the time, and you know the channel, but suppose what you're after begins earlier than expected. With no way to rewind TV yet, you more than likely only get one chance to get the show or movie you want. You quickly hit record, and maybe you miss 30 seconds, maybe a brief portion of the opening credits. Hardly noticeable. On the other hand, maybe you forget the time and you miss the first 5 or 10 minutes of something, and it really sucks because maybe you haven't seen this thing before and you have no idea how much you actually did miss, but you really want it in the collection. Like I said, you can't rewind live television, so you either save the incomplete recording as it is or you wait for your whatever to re-air, even though you have no idea how long that could be. Could be a week, could be a year, maybe it'll never air again and you missed your one and only chance. It's a gamble. It's even worse if you record something that comes out looking like garbage or straight out has a bad signal connection. There's no fixing that beyond recording another broadcast. Now of course, with any VCR made after the 1970s, you could always employ the built-in timer that most VCRs come with, if you have the patience. They may look advanced, but VCR timers can have a lot of problems. After spending a few hours trying to get the clock set, it's time to get on with it. This video cassette recorder has been in my family since 1999. I've been using it since 2008, and looking at the recording timer, it's complicated. First, you have to make sure that clock is working. You press timer, it might take you to this, which would lead you to think this is the actual timer. Believe me, I've had to set this thing so many times it isn't funny. Once that's all done, you can actually access the timer, and it looks pretty simple. A VCR channel to record, a start time, a stop time, month and day, tape speed between short play and long play, and something called PDC, which apparently stands for Program Delivery Control. Never heard of it. According to an online forum, it uses analog signals to alter a VCR's timer if the program you want is delayed. It may sound convenient, but it's RF only, so if you're using digital television, chances are you can't use it. It sounds useful, but it's pretty limited. Beyond that, a pretty standard timer. You just need to get that fucking clock sorted. I checked out my second VCR. I've had this one for a few years, but it gets very little use. This timer is pretty much the same, albeit a bit more clear on how it works, and I didn't have to set the clock with this one. You can record on any day up to a month in advance, set the start and end time, set the channel and tape speed, and you're good to go. I would say between them, their capability is about even, but 2 looks a bit less tedious. Now granted, most of the time a VCR timer would work, and they were definitely more refined by the time DVD recorders hit the market. But let's say you had something you really wanted to save. You left a VHS tape in the player, you set the timer, you went about your lives, and then you came back to see the timer failed to start. That would piss you off. Once the timer actually starts a recording, you better hope you set the end time correctly, because those things are precise and will shut off the second it reaches that specific time. If the recording stops and you miss a part of a broadcast, hey, you snooze, you lose. It'll serve you right for not setting that timer for another 2 minutes. Also, something more related to DVD recorders. If you set a timer for one specific show, you better make sure you don't have the timer set to record every day at the same time. Otherwise you're going to end up with some garbage you have zero interest in. Believe me, it happens. This DVD from early 2006 is an example of a timer set for multiple days that actually failed on the first day, but actually worked on the second and third day. Both times recording shit I didn't want. Thankfully it was Sky Plus, so I was able to record what I wanted before actually burning to a DVD. I probably could have deleted the other recordings before finalising the discs. Always check what you're saving before finalising the discs. You could always delete what you don't want and replace it with stuff you actually do want. Back to VCRs, because DVD recorders have their own set of problems that we just don't have time for. Let's say you've chosen to forego the use of a timer. Maybe you don't know how it works, or you just don't have the time or patience to set one up. Now comes another issue you never thought existed: the record function itself. If you only use the machine occasionally, you wouldn't notice this, but if you record TV on a regular basis, you'll realise the recording function has a minor delay to it. If you're simply starting a minute or two prior to what you want, it's not a problem. If you're hoping to time it, the more precise you're trying to be, the harder it becomes. Maybe you'll miss a fraction of a logo before the movie you want.
Your presentation.
Or maybe you're trying to record a specific part of a show you want. You know what you want, you've planned it out in your head, you hit record, and this is what you get.
Coasting down the hill, running easily with the wind whistling past. Suddenly, it was a god's warning whistle.
You know what the funny thing is? This was a Sky Plus recording. I could have easily retaped it, and it would have taken me less than 5 minutes. I have no excuse. I was just lazy. Now, I have a couple of VHS tapes I want to talk about, but we have to deal with one more thing when it comes to recording on these ancient pieces of tech. Reusing them. If you are wanting to recycle a VHS tape, you better be 150% sure it's the tape for the job. Maybe it's something you have no problem taping over. But sooner or later, if you use a lot of VHS tapes, inevitably, you'll accidentally tape over something you love and wanted to keep. Once that recording is gone, it's gone. There's no coming back from that. You save a lot of televised content, everything's all good, you accidentally hit record one day, and all you're left with is a brief promotion for an Al Pacino movie from 2 recordings ago and 3 hours of empty static.
Scotland's big film premiere, Heat.
To close out this section, a bit of advice: don't ever copy a DVD onto a VHS tape, especially one that already has a recording you actually like.
Weenies, thank you!
That's just embarrassing. That's not only a waste of tape, but it's also a massive downgrade in terms of quality and functionality. Now then, time to talk about something kids of the 90s used to do all the time. fill up VHS tapes with episodes of their favourite TV shows. I have 2 tapes to look at, one for Timon and Pumbaa and one for Lilo and Stitch. Both are from 2005, both primarily from Toon Disney, both running for 3 hours, both are dearly loved by me, and both are sharing a multitude of issues mentioned so far. First of all, both tapes are reused. Timon and Pumbaa was previously a tape for Hong Kong Phooey, Recess, and whatever the hell this is. Lilo and Stitch, on the other hand, has been through a lot. As evidenced at the end of the tape, it was previously UK Gold. Awesome. There's no footage whatsoever left on the tape, but after UK Gold, it was used as a marathon tape for Goof Troop. I loved the show as a kid, but when Lilo and Stitch entered the picture, there was only one choice. The tape was quickly reused and filled up with a show I loved even more. The tape fills up, but a problem remains. I want more. Should I get a new tape for this? Nah, just reuse the tape again for new episodes. It'll be fine. This is why the Lilo and Stitch intro plays twice at the beginning of the tape. Now, with only 3 hours on one tape at SP speed, 6 hours at LP with lower quality, you have to conserve space, and 2 considerations come to mind. First, if it's a marathon tape, you might as well cut the opening and closing credits. You get one set at the beginning and end, that should be enough. That's all fine if you can time that recording delay. Then there's the issue with commercial breaks.
Right, that's it. No more sweets for a week. Both of you.
As is evidenced by looking through my collection, I wasn't too concerned with the presence of commercial breaks. But on tapes like these, like I said, it's all about conserving as much time and space as possible, so they have to go. On Toon Disney, this wasn't a problem. With Timon and Pumbaa, they didn't have ad breaks mid-show. I learned that after butchering the first 2 episodes.
Now that, Pumbaa, is what I call fast food.
On Disney Channel, however, if I taped a bit of a commercial break, I would have to stop the tape, rewind a few seconds, bearing in mind that recording delay and the previously unmentioned fact that the tape would start a few seconds earlier than when I stopped. I would then have to wait out the entire 3-minute break and then be ready to hit record the second the show resumes. Either I would briefly catch the title card for the next episode, or I'd miss it completely. Like I said, I love these tapes, but there was a lot of frustration behind them. And in the days before Disney Plus, when you'd be seriously limited when it comes to home media, they're a godsend. With these 2 shows, I had 1 VHS tape and 1 DVD for Timon and Pumbaa. And for Lilo and Stitch, I had nothing. The show never really made it to DVD outside of Japan. If you have a limited collection, cherish what you have. These VHS tapes, and the entire collection in general, are examples of the extremely tedious process of television preservation. And you know what? I will love them forever. This collection is a window into the world of television from my childhood, and for all its faults, I can't help but feel an unending amount of affection for it. I have a lot of VHS tapes in my collection, collected over more than 25 years, but when it comes to my all-time favourites, there's no question. Well, that was beautiful. Okay, this time, let's go over here. I own a lot of TV shows on DVD, ranging from comedy and drama to reality and documentaries. Let's take a deeper look at one I've covered before. The Simpsons. Last time I talked about The Simpsons, I covered my introduction to the series, the beauty of mixing the series with pizza, and I talked about that one time I marathoned nearly 650 episodes in only 6 weeks. Now let me tell you about when I collected the series on DVD. Before we do this, we need to rehash a few stories. Why the hell not at this point? We've already done my favourite TV show, a handful of Disney movies, and an old TV service. So let's do another one. This story begins in 2007 when I saw the Simpsons movie. I barely knew what the series was or who these characters were, but 14-year-old me loved what I saw. Just to be clear, this is what my juvenile teenage sense of humour found super funny and ultimately cemented my love for the series.
So long, losers!
I know. I was 14 years old. Give me a break. One casual browse of the TV guide tells me The Simpsons air nightly on Sky One. Add in some pizza and you've got a great way to spend a Tuesday night. Now of course, given the time, I missed the series on VHS. I knew about them, but I knew nothing about the series, and either way, I was too young to be watching a show like this. DVD, on the other hand, was right up my alley in the late 2000s. The first Simpsons DVDs I ever saw were two my dad owned, Christmas with the Simpsons and Too Hot for TV. There were probably more, but these were the two I actually remember. I have my own copy of Christmas with the Simpsons, so we'll start here. 5 episodes on one disc, 4 that actually relate to Christmas, and one about Homer having a snowplow business. Also, one of those episodes features Lisa finding her own religion, but details.
I'm a Buddhist!
Beyond some pretty bland presentation, this release is pretty good. If you're looking for some seasonal content from the first 13 or so years of The Simpsons, there you go. You get to see where the show started, and you get Mr. Plow, debatably one of the best episodes the series has ever had, so you can't go wrong there. Let's give it 4 out of 5. Then of course, there's the movie. It's by far one of my favourite animated movies of all time, up there with Toy Story 2, Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show, The Lion King, and Pinocchio. Like I've said before, this is what introduced me to the series, and the rest is history. It may not be an artistic masterpiece, but for me, it holds up really well after 15 years. Simple, yet vague, 5 out of 5. Okay, formalities over. We need to talk about the rest of this collection, and it starts with a story. After watching the show for a couple of years, I discovered the show was available on DVD, at that point up to season 12. It would be the first time collecting an extensive TV series, not counting the Looney Tunes DVDs and a few other miscellaneous bits and bobs. Over the course of 2 years, I would collect the first 9 seasons and I loved them. While I don't think they were on the same level, these became the new Looney Tunes. If I went anywhere overnight, I was guaranteed to have a box set or 2 on hand. Doesn't matter which set I had enough to last me for my time away from home, ranging from great episodes,
failure to wait by vehicle, $250,
to fascinating bonus features including documentaries, audio commentaries, deleted scenes, even some vintage commercials.
Crispity, crunchity, peanut buttery Butterfinger.
Lesson number 3. Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
Now of course, bonus features will vary from season to season, but if you're only interested in episodic content, then I don't see how you can go wrong. The episodes are great, the packaging is excellent, the bonus features can be fascinating if you're in the right mood. Just pick a season you like and enjoy. Like I said, I don't think they were quite on the quality level of these gems, but they more than did the job when I was really into the show, almost as much as I was with Cartoon Network, and I appreciate them for that. Plus, these days, you can get the first 2/3 of the series for dirt cheap, which is even better. On that note, let's jump ahead 12 years. I no longer have my original Simpsons DVDs. You move houses a couple of times, things will inevitably go missing. Plus, with my track record of VHS and DVD organisation, I'm lucky I haven't lost more, VHS especially. So when I saw the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons show up on eBay for only £40, I couldn't pass up the opportunity. After all, I had just finished collecting another show, so it would be nice to pick up a show I actually like. Look, I'd like to tell you what it was like rewatching the show, but I can't. I'd like to tell you how rewatching the Johto saga was fucking torture and how Johto League Champions broke me, but I can't. I'd like to tell you how Trainer's Choice was a great idea that just needed more work, but I can't. I'd like to tell you why I hate Pokemon Black and White with a blinding passion, but I can't. I can't touch this franchise, as much as I have things to say. I covered why many years ago. I'll just leave it at Pokemon is a show that's perfectly fine if you watch one episode per week, but any more than that and you begin to notice just how bad the writing is with the show, and it's noticeable as early as the appearance of that giant Dragonite at Bill's Lighthouse. Right, enough of that. Let's talk about the rest of these. Now, I don't want to talk about the overall quality of The Simpsons. I did that last time. The first 9 seasons are the best, and the more recent seasons aren't bad, they're just not as good. Trust me, if you can do a 650 episode marathon of this show and still have positive feelings towards it afterwards, that has to mean something. If I just happen to catch a TV broadcast of The Simpsons, I won't complain or object. The season won't matter, as long as it's not a clip show, it still amounts to 22 minutes of enjoyment. No, what I want to talk about is the packaging. With seasons 1 through 10, it was all fine. Standard DVD box sets with holsters for the discs. It's basic, but it works. For seasons 11 through 20, we get by far the worst packaging in my entire collection. You open up one of these sets and you may think all is fine. The interiors at least look nice, and hey, it's better than having a bland case. Just look at season 19, the artwork in that looks amazing. I don't think it justifies the price I paid for it, but there is a lot of passion here. Artwork like this would give the initial impression that these box sets could be great. And then you stop to think, where are the discs? Up until this point, we have something along the lines of this. But where do we keep the discs in these later sets? That is atrocious. You know how easy it can be for DVDs to get scratched? This is how you speedrun it. Don't keep them in plastic holsters. Hide them in very thin cardboard slots. Having to almost tear the cardboard just to grab hold of a disc is infuriating. Yes, you can get the discs out, but good luck doing it more than once or twice without actually damaging them. Sometimes the disc can be in the slot upside down, dramatically increasing the risk of damage. Yeah, everything up to season 15 can be found on eBay for dirt cheap, but you'd have to be committed to the series to be happy with the idea of constantly replacing discs. Anything after that is when the prices start to elevate. Season 18 alone cost more than the first 10 seasons put together. I don't care what release it is. It could be something great like Groundhog Day, or it could be something garbage like Home Alone 4. No one wants a box or case like this. Ever. If these masterpieces came packaged like this, I'd never want to touch them again. Time to give these some ratings. These reflect the packaging alone and not the quality of entertainment included. Seasons 1 through 10 get a 5 out of 5. I see no problems with them whatsoever. If anything, these should be the gold standard on how to package a TV show on DVD. Seasons 11 through 15 get 3 out of 5. The packaging starts to suffer here, and while the sets are cheap enough to replace, you really shouldn't have to. Season 19 is an overpriced limited release, but it has really nice artwork on the inside. Clearly someone put a fair bit of thought into it, so that gets a super generous 2 out of 5. Seasons 18 and 20 get 1 out of 5. For the prices these seasons go for, these sets are a complete joke when it comes to product quality. Once again, this has nothing to do with the actual quality of whatever season of the show each set represents. If Season 18 was packaged like this, I would be perfectly happy with it. But, my gripes with these cases aside, I love this collection. I've loved The Simpsons for over 15 years, and teenage me would have happily had the entire series on DVD at the drop of a hat. Of course, at this point, it doesn't look like the rest of the series will get released on DVD, not while Disney Plus is available. And yes, I'm missing some compilation DVDs and about 1 million VHS releases, but to own 20 seasons, over 440 episodes on one shelf, that's pretty good. It's a lot better than Pokemon. Now, what's the packaging like with that series? Who gives a shit? Cut to black! There are 4 different kinds of VHS tapes in this world. Retail tapes. You buy them in a store, you take them home, you watch them, you're happy. Rental tapes. You go to a different store, pay a flat fee to borrow it for a few days, you take the tape home, you learn you have a faulty video cassette, your mother gets pissed off, you take it back the next day for a refund. Or you enjoy the release, take it back and happily rent something else. Recordable tapes. The blank kind you buy in bulk and maybe you occasionally use one to save stuff from TV and then forget about it in 2 weeks and proceed to reuse the same tape despite the fact you have an entire box full of them. And then there's the promotional stuff. These things you wouldn't find in stores and would have to either special order them, most often by calling a phone number or visiting a dedicated store, or you'd receive it as a special giveaway. These tapes never pushed for long-term entertainment. It's in the name. They're out to promote a business or a product, and as long as you had a video cassette recorder, VHS was a perfect way to convey their message, whether it be a holiday planner or... That will never get old. Now, I turned 30 this year, and you know what else is 30 years old?
Come join the fun at Cartoon Network, where cartoons live.
They grow up so fast. Yep, 1993 was the year of birth for me and the British version of Cartoon Network. There's only a few months between us. It's like it was meant to be. Or it's a completely irrelevant coincidence. It's definitely one of them. For the past 25 years, Cartoon Network has meant the world to me, for many reasons I have discussed before. There are many things in my collection I wouldn't own if I never watched that channel as a kid. VHS, DVD, magazines, giant tribute to Tom and Jerry. It never ends for me. So, as a birthday celebration, I think it's time to look at what I consider to be the holy grail of my VHS collection. Maybe next time. For now, it's time to look at A Taste of Cartoon Network. As you'd expect, this is a VHS tape released to promote the then brand new American TV channel. The date on the slipcase has 1993 on it, so chances are the network was only a few months old. I don't know how one would have obtained this tape back in the day, but I suspect in the style of good old television advertising, there would have been commercials for this brand new channel, claiming to be the world's first and only 24-hour channel dedicated to animated programming, with a phone number to call if you were interested in a simple videotape. If your kids were after cartoon entertainment, they would normally have to rely on channels such as ABC and CBS, and of course Disney Channel, but those weren't dedicated to animation. If anything, cartoons were a small fraction of a much bigger catalogue of programming, so a channel claiming to air only animation would have been a big deal for the kids. I mean, hey, that's what happened in the UK. Before Cartoon Network, I had 2 VHS tapes dedicated to cartoons, not counting movies, and I would have had to rely on BBC Two for Tasmania and Tom and Jerry Kids, or I'd have to be there for Dig It for some Disney shows every weekend morning on ITV. So, let's take a look at what kids would have seen back in 1993.
The tape you're watching is just a taste of the Cartoon Network. An appetizer, a mere morsel of what you can expect from the first and only 24-hour Cartoon Network.
Holy shit. Hold on a minute. That's it. 10 seconds in and they say it all. It's a sneak preview of what you could expect if you subscribe to this brand new TV channel. It's a taste of Cartoon Network, just like it says on the case. It's perfect. There's nothing more to say, right? Let's have another look. Well, like it said, this 1 hour long VHS tape gives you a decent sample of the brand new Cartoon Network. In this case, short promotional tidbits, whether they be informational segments or simple cartoon previews, interspersed with shows you would have seen on Cartoon Network in the first few years. In this case, Huckleberry Hound, Tom and Jerry, Droopy, Space Ghost, The Jetsons, and Looney Tunes. Oh, excuse me, Merry Melodies. In my eyes, this is exactly what a promotional VHS tape should be. It's entertaining, substantial, and informative. Not only does it promote their revolutionary product really well, if kids are watching, they get some cartoons they may never have seen before. Basically, it's everything this thing isn't. It's not a perfect release. I never watched Huckleberry Hound or Space Ghost when I was a kid, and while the promotional content is by far the most interesting parts of the VHS tape,
here's one more reason you should have the Cartoon Network.
It all amounts to 5 minutes worth, while the remaining 55 minutes are dedicated to actual cartoons, a third of that time going to the Jetsons. Not that that's a bad thing, it all depends on how much you like the episodes included. It's also very much a product of its time, as is evident in not only the selection of cartoons, but also the reference to cartoons being available on Laserdisc. You know it's vintage when they acknowledge that old format. All in all, this is an excellent piece of television history that I'm proud to own. That being said, if you come across this on eBay, I do not recommend that you buy this. Being a limited promotional release from 30 years ago, this thing cost me a fortune. By far the most expensive VHS tape I have ever bought and will ever buy. You think those later Simpsons DVDs were pricey? Oh no. They were practically bargains compared to this. If this thing were available on Laserdisc, it'd be even more expensive. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to say it one last time. Your VHS tapes are not that valuable unless they're promotional releases or something out of print. And even then, don't pay anything more than $100. If you see a rare VHS tape going for £127 with a torn cover, run away from it. And if you see an out of print tape for $1 million, run even further. And let's not go into those Black Diamond Disney tapes. Just because you see something listed for a high amount, that doesn't mean it's worth that. If anything, it's probably worth a lot less. All that being said, I give A Taste of Cartoon Network 4 out of 5. The promotional clips are the highlight. They are great. And while I'm not big on all the cartoons included, they fit the bill perfectly fine. Personally, I'd rather watch the Disney Holiday Planners, but if I'm being objective, A Taste of Cartoon Network is the best promotional VHS tape I have ever seen. My grandfather infused me with a childhood love for certain things. A VHS tape or two, an unhealthy addiction to carbonated poison, and among other things, a love for model railways.
And now, back to Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends on Cartoon Network.
Now granted, a bit of that love probably came from this TV show I was practically glued to in those days, but I credit the old man for giving it the jump start the hobby needed. He owned a few locomotives and even built a layout for us. It was a simple loop at the time, and even with very few engines in rolling stock, it won me over for years. When you're 4 years old, just watching a train go around a circuit of track several hundred times a day can be fascinating to watch. Also, I just want to make it clear, this footage is not mine. I have almost nothing from the 90s, so if I stole your video clips to fill this section, I dearly appreciate it. He died in 1999, but my dad helped 6-year-old me keep the hobby alive. We eventually moved the small layout to the house attic and spent years expanding it. What you see here is from 2006, during some landscape work. My dad and stepmother were creating a car park next to the main station, as well as a papier-mâché tunnel. I had no idea how this stuff was made, but I trusted their judgment and their skills, so I just let them work. This wasn't the final version of the layout. The tunnel will get painted over, and we did change a few things over the years, but when I found these clips on an old, dusty CD, I was amazed to look back on something I hadn't seen in years and forgot even existed. The video clips, not the railway. Now, since this is Video Memories, we have to talk about some physical media, and beyond that CD, we do have some stuff to look at. You go to the occasional model railway convention, you pick up a few things. We have On the Right Track, a beginner's guide to model railways, a VHS tape labelled simply as Model Railways, no idea what the deal is with this. And last but not least, we have... Wait, where is it? Oh yeah. Hang on. So, as a follow-up to the last review, when I talked about promotional VHS tapes and I threw the specimen at the door, the cassette broke. In this case, one of the tape guides and parts of the cassette shell, rendering the tape unplayable. I could, in theory, repair the damage by extracting the tape rails and adding them to a new cassette shell. It wouldn't be the first time a tape has been repaired in this collection. But what's the point, really? I've made it clear many times that this VHS tape is hot garbage, so all I'd be losing is that front label. I assure you, as much as this tape sucks, I didn't plan for this to happen. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I picked this up at a railway convention or if it just came with some crappy product elsewhere. It's been 5 years and I've got no info on it. It could have been from anywhere. You know what? Just forget it. Okay, that gives us 2 to look at. Let's do model railways. Well, for starters, the front cover looks remarkably stock, even with that vague generic title. You read the back of the case and it just screams short promotional release. There's very little info on here in terms of production dates. The best we have is a 1996 copyright date on the cassette. The whole thing gives off the feeling of bootleg. But let's check it out. Well, it's model railways. It's exactly what it is. What you get is a group of enthusiasts talking about their model railway layouts, evidently from an exhibition from sometime in the early 90s. There is very little in terms of substance in the very short 25-minute runtime. Fade in, small bit of music, footage of a model train or two, you better hope it's in focus, brief commentary from builder/enthusiast, more stock music, cut to black, and rinse and repeat. The VHS case talks multiple times about this offering a look at the railway world in miniature. I think that's given it a bit too much credit. You get basic clips of railways, and any information you get will more than likely be super vague, not to mention incredibly out of date at this point. This is the kind of thing someone would film with a VHS camera, make multiple copies of, and sell at conventions at super cheap prices. Which is no doubt what happened here. The end of the tape says it can also be available for $9.99 including postage, and I'll be damned if I'm paying that much for something like this. If you're a hardcore loyalist to the hobby, it's fine, I guess. Otherwise, you'll be bored before the 3-minute long introduction is finished. I'll cut it a break and give it 2 out of 5. But let's be real, it's not great. All I know is I made it 15 minutes before losing interest. Like I said, it just feels like a homemade bootleg, down to the stock VHS case, the bland as all hell content, the generic on-screen text at the end, and the fact that despite the cassette itself having a supposed runtime of 37 minutes, the main feature only runs for 25 minutes, after which there is a further 20 minutes of black. I am not kidding. Once the end credits finish, the VHS tape will run for an additional 20 minutes of nothing. Okay, for this, it's losing a star, 1 out of 5. In terms of promotional VHS tapes, it's not as bad as Chad Valley, but man does it come close. Alright, let's check out On the Right Track. The tape seems to be from 2000, so it's a bit more recent. Excellent, something from this century. Okay, brief intro, and we have a guy with 40 years professional experience telling us how to build a model railway in your own home. He goes into detail about the best material to use for baseboards, including the right tools for it, how to design a track layout, which types of track to buy, how to put track together and keep it secure, how to make scenery with the right materials, what kinds of trains and rolling stock are good for beginners. Outside of how to service a locomotive, this video has everything you could possibly need. Really, this release is remarkable. It goes into much more detail than I expected. I never saw this much with the Disney holiday planners. Imagine if those presenters told you how to pack your bags and how to navigate an airport. Not even Neil Buchanan was that in depth, as good as Art Attack was. I have no desire to make a new model railway, but I found what Mr. Dave Slater was saying to be truly fascinating and engaging. In terms of VHS promotions, I hesitate to give it 5. It's 23 years old, I don't know if any details are outdated, I have zero knowledge about how to create a model railway outside of laying track in buildings, so I have no idea on the degree of accuracy. So let's be safe and give it a 4 out of 5. Very detailed and highly informative. And if it's not entirely out of date, it's available on DVD, so if you're getting into the hobby, go get it! Okay, that's 2 more done. 1 good, 1 not so good. I don't know, something just feels wrong. There you go, old friend. Sleep well.
All the world will love you just as long as you are a shooting star.
You know what the best thing about summer break was? More cartoons, obviously. As if it would be anything else. I mean, think about it. In the UK, you get 6 weeks away from the world of education, and you have 4, maybe 5 TV channels that primarily feature cartoons. What could be better? But one thing you'd see increasingly during summer holidays would be cartoon movies. Normally, you'd be lucky if you saw one movie a week, courtesy of the Cartoon Theatre.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as tonight's feature is about to begin, brought to you by Cartoon Theatre.
But in the summer, you could see an animated movie every day. You could just be watching Billy and Mandy, and all of a sudden you'd see a promo for Dexter's Laboratory Ego Trip or the Powerpuff Girls movie. Or if you're on Toonami, you could see something for Pokemon or Dragon Ball. If you venture towards the Disney channels, you get Recess School's Out, Kim Possible: A Stitch in Time, or maybe a new Pixar movie, whatever you're in the mood for. It could be Tom and Jerry in Cars, a weird giant robot from space, a horde of illegal genetic experiments swarming Hawaii, or how about that new Scooby-Doo movie? I've heard the monsters are actually real in this one. The possibilities were endless. In my eye, the best movies you could see in those days were Looney Tunes movies. You grow up watching them on Cartoon Network, you expand the love to a few VHS tapes and the occasional crappy basketball movie. You solidify that love in DVD form, and at that point, if you see a promo for something like Daffy Duck's Quackbusters, you won't be able to say no. Just make sure you have a spare VHS tape for it, and for the love of God, don't accidentally tape over it. As I said earlier, if you tape over an analog recording, there's no going back from that. I know you might like the talking trains, but you're taping over a good movie here, you stupid fucking imbecile. Okay, let's focus on what I do have. We've already done Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island. So what about Tweety's High-Flying Adventure? I have 2 copies of it. It's good. Next. What we have left is 3 movies relating to Bugs Bunny. The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie, the Looney 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 Bugs Bunny movie, and Bugs Bunny's 1001 Rabbit Tales. So that's 2 recordable tapes, 1 retail, 2 movies in the 1980s, 1 movie in the 1970s, 2 directed by Friz Freleng, 1 directed by Chuck Jones, 2 released in the same DVD set, and 1 released as a standalone. We'll do them chronologically, starting with the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. Now, what must be said about Looney Tunes movies made in the 1970s and 80s is that none of them are truly movies. If we're being technical, they're just compilations with new animated segments bridging a series of cartoons, and these 3 movies are of no exception. As the opening titles would suggest, this movie is basically Chase the Movie, and it features Bugs Bunny hosting a series of cartoons featuring himself and the Roadrunner. After a Star Wars spoof, some bits with a caveman and some live-action slapstick comedies. As for the cartoon shorts included, you get 11 shorts, all directed by Chuck Jones, featuring many Looney Tunes characters such as Marvin the Martian, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd and Pepe Le Pew. Not all of them feature a chase, but most of them are still entertaining. I'm not the biggest fan of the skunk, and I'd rather have Rabbit of Seville over What's Opera Doc, but there we go. In reality, this is more Chuck Jones the movie than the Chase movie. Bugs may be in the new in-between segments, but he's not necessarily in every short. And for the second character in the title, you don't even see Roadrunner until the last 20 minutes, at which point you get bombarded with a mass load of Roadrunner clips. So if you like 18 straight minutes of Wile E. Coyote suffering, there you go. So with all that in mind, I give the Chuck Jones movie a 4 out of 5. There are a few shorts I don't really care for, but it features my favourite Bugs Bunny short. It has debatably the best short Jones ever directed. And of course, you get
Rabbit season! Duck season! Rabbit season! Duck season! Rabbit season! Duck season!
So if you're interested in the best years of Chuck Jones's time at Termite Terrace, this will probably suffice. Next, the Looney Bugs Bunny movie. Jesus, that's a lot of loony. Apparently I got this one super cheap. $2.99 for a sweet deal. So after a reminder of Bugs' 50th anniversary with a god-awful voice and a showing of the award-winning Nighty Night Bugs, we get into it. An opening sequence with live-action comedy segments similar to the last movie, and a brief history of Looney Tunes before we're introduced to Yosemite Sam, easily the best character ever created by director Friz Freleng. The Looney Bugs Bunny movie is basically an anthology film, broken up into 3 acts with different characters taking centre stage. Act 1, Satan's Waiting, basically a remake of the classic short Devil's Feud Cake, opens with Sam courting Granny in order to rip off her recently inherited $50 million. If you know Yosemite Sam shorts, you know where this is going. Bugs drops a safe on him and suddenly Sam's in hell, where the devil and his angry demon dogs await. The devil will only let him return to Earth if he can find someone to replace him in hell, and as it just so happens, Sam knows just the fella for this. The devil sends him back to Earth multiple times as a legion guard in ancient Rome, an Arab in the desert with a stupid camel, and as a cowboy in the Old West. Apparently the devil has the power of time travel. Okay, sure. Each time, Sam fails, returns to hell, and the devil sends him back as a different persona, until eventually Sam tells the devil to go fuck himself and go get the rabbit himself, while he stays in hell. The concept is a bit ridiculous and far-fetched, but whatever. It's Looney Tunes, and you get some fun Yosemite Sam shorts, so it's fine. Act 2, The Unmentionables, is a spoof of the gangster films of the 1930s and 40s. Basically, you get 3 cartoons featuring the iconic crook, Rocky. Bugs becomes a detective, gets kidnapped and fights against the gangsters. They escape justice, hatch evil plans involving Daffy Duck and Golden Eggs, and a kidnapping plot involving Sylvester and Tweety. Shoehorn in a few new scenes involving Bugs arresting the bad guys after each short, and you've got what amounts to a trilogy of gangster B-movies that just happen to feature cartoon characters. It's silly and goofy, but a lot of fun. Finally, Act 3, the Oswald Awards, which is apparently an awards show created by Friz Freleng. Oh super, first we had the Chuck Jones movie, now we have the Friz Freleng movie. This act basically spoofs the standard film and TV awards show. Loads of characters arrive at the venue, some are nominated for an award, in this case the Oswald, during which 3 cartoons for each nominee is shown. Bugs wins the award, Daffy gets pissed off, challenges Bugs to a showdown for the award, eventually resulting in Bugs donating the award to Daffy after the duck explodes himself. I didn't care for some of the cartoons in this act, nor am I much of an award show viewer, but Bugs going against Daffy at the end was entertaining. Overall, I don't know if it's as entertaining as the last movie, but it's more original. So let's give it an equal score of 4 out of 5. Finally, we have Bugs Bunny's 1001 Rabbit Tales, again directed by Friz Freleng. Bugs and Daffy start as booksellers. Whoever sells the most wins an undisclosed prize. Awesome. What isn't so awesome is the first 20 minutes. Don't get me wrong, the cartoons are good as always.
Take one step on that rope and I'll cut it.
But they have almost nothing to do with the story. They're in there to pad out the story to get it over an hour. Daffy takes shelter in Porky Pig's house, posing as a taxidermied duck, and briefly faces off against Elmer Fudd. Bugs pretends to be the child of 2 apes before reuniting with Daffy in the desert. Daffy steals a jewel, they separate again, and we finally get to the actual story. Bugs arrives at Yosemite Sam's palace and is held hostage by Sam. The Sultan gives him an offer: read stories to his spoiled son or be boiled in oil. Obviously not a fan of the latter, Bugs decides to begrudgingly read 1001 fairy tales to Prince Abadabba, And that's where the classic cartoons come in, taking the form of fairy tales, such as Jack and the Beanstalk, Hansel and Gretel, and Red Riding Hood. In the end, the movie has a great concept for a story. Unfortunately, the first 20 minutes hold it back with entertaining shorts that don't really amount to much in the overall feature. Out of the three, this movie is probably the most Bugs Bunny centered. Bugs is constantly at the center of the plot for the last 50 minutes, and Daffy has almost nothing to do with it. Cut out Daffy the first 20 minutes and add in a few more fairy tales, and this could easily be a 5. As it is, I give it a generous 4 out of 5. Interesting storyline held back by a padded runtime, but it can still be entertaining for fans of the tunes. Honestly, when you get right down to it, none of these movies are bad. The story and cartoon choices are hit and miss, but there's still entertainment value throughout. I mean, think of how hard it can be to turn Looney Tunes into a soulless cash grab with almost no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Oh wait. Now, when I reviewed this big thing, I thought I'd be done with Disney movies. But as it turns out, there is one movie I need to give another chance before the show ends. I've talked about this story before, but time to rehash. Having a VHS collection of your favourites is great as a kid, but it's almost a guarantee that a friend will have a VHS tape you don't, but you really like the look of it. There's a simple solution here. Exchange a couple of tapes for a few days. Offer them something they might want to see. In the tail end of VHS, I had a neighbour who owned Alice in Wonderland. I had never seen the film before, despite owning many promos for it on video.
And when you think of magical adventures, how could you not think of Alice in Wonderland?
Fortunately, there was one VHS tape she was interested in. Not this one already looked like garbage, so I gave her the 2000 re-release. A fair trade as far as we were concerned. At first, all seemed fine. She watched the pirate show, enjoyed it. I watched Alice in Wonderland and I didn't like it that much. It just didn't do much for me. Before I had the chance to return the VHS tape, she and her family moved to Australia. So for the past 16 years, I've owned her copy of Alice in Wonderland. At this point, I've had it longer than she did. It's been on my mind for a while, but before we close up shop, I want to give it another try. Wait, what am I doing? Watch a movie on VHS instead of Blu-ray. What a silly idea. Now, I know very little about the original story, so I'm judging Alice in Wonderland purely on its own. Past the opening credits and the film gets straight to the point. A girl called Alice is bored out of her mind during a history lesson. She starts imagining her own world, and all of a sudden, along comes a rabbit who's late for a very important date.
No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
Alice follows him into a burrow, and suddenly she finds herself falling into a really bad LSD trip. Barely 5 minutes into the movie as well. We're moving fast here. The film never stops for a breather. Alice goes into a talking door's big mouth, meets a couple of zany oddballs called Tweedledee and Tweedledum who tell a story about a walrus. She destroys the rabbit's house by eating candy. A dodo gets the idea to burn the house down to free Alice. There's a bunch of talking flowers, a smoking caterpillar, a cat with an insane smile, and the Queen of Hearts who wants to cut her servants' heads off for decorating her garden.
What firehead?
This movie just doesn't stop. It just goes on and on with the craziness, not to mention the frequent musical numbers. That's basically what this movie is. Alice moves from one crazy scenario to another, as if each were their own short cartoon in a series. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. With only a few minutes left in the film, the Cheshire Cat pranks the Queen of Hearts, framing Alice for it. The Queen holds a trial for Alice, many characters appear again, the Cheshire Cat causes more trouble, Alice has to flee before the Queen can cut her head off, and suddenly she wakes up in the real world, as if nothing happened. Did she really go to Wonderland, or was it all a dream? Who knows? Overall, I have mixed feelings. The movie isn't one of my favourites in the Disney catalogue, not even close, but the animation is really nice. The humour is insane and doesn't take itself seriously, and with a short runtime of only 75 minutes, this can add up to real entertainment value if you're in the mood for something crazy. Let's give it a high 3 out of 5. I still don't love it, but I can't say I was disappointed. Alice in Wonderland is not bad.
The end.
Okay, October, Halloween, creepy stuff. Let's talk. I've already done 2 Scooby-Doo movies in video memories, in this case, Cyber Chase and Zombie Island. Before the end of the show, I want to do one more. Scooby-Doo and the Monster of Mexico from 2003. Unlike the other 2, this is one I have never seen. That being said, I also haven't seen The Witch's Ghost or The Alien Invaders, so I'm not doing well here. Monster of Mexico may be a unique case in my collection. It's a VHS tape I haven't seen that not only do I own, but I own it twice. I have no idea why I own 2 of them. It's like asking why I own 5 copies of Pinocchio across 3 media formats. It will never make sense to me. So instead of trying to work it out, let's check it out. We have a trailer for a polar bear movie I have never seen and a promo for Scooby-Doo on Boomerang. Sure, why not? It is Scooby-Doo after all. And so we begin. The gang visits Fred's pen pal and his family in Veracruz, Mexico. And as it just so happens, the locals of the town are being terrorized by a monster called El Chupacabra. I mean, it's Mexico, I probably should have seen that one coming. A big Latin musical montage involving them being scared shitless by a skunk, buying sombreros, taking photos by a cactus, and Scooby devouring spicy peppers. It wouldn't be the first time. And they're in Mexico. They meet the pen pal's massive family, and Scooby falls in love with the family dog. I expect this to go nowhere. There's also some guy who wants to buy the family's land. I smell bad guy. Now it's time for a backstory on El Chupacabra. Everything will be fine as long as they don't go outside. Needless to say, it doesn't last. They find weird footprints and now they have a mystery to solve. So how is The Monster of Mexico? Not great. It has an okay start and the mystery solving begins around the 20-minute mark. The problem is that, despite being about a famous Mexican legend, the story just isn't interesting, and I zone out by the half-hour mark. Compare this to a movie about real zombies or a computerized monster in a video game, and you have a plot that's kind of dull. I skip ahead to the end and... oh, so she did it. So the asshole wanting to buy the land had nothing to do with it. Whatever, the movie bored me. 2 out of 5. Now I really don't get why I own 2 copies. Well, that was a letdown. You know what? Since we're here, let's do The Legend of the Vampire. This is another one I'm not familiar with. Then why the hell do I own it? Did I just start collecting Scooby-Doo movies when I realised I liked Cyber Chase, Zombie Island, and the 2 live-action films? Let's check this one out. Okay, so we have some people performing a concert, and holy shit, there's a vampire! Well, after the title sequence, a horde of bats cover the screen and the Scooby-Doo theme starts playing. Now that's a touch I like, however brief it may be. So as it turns out, the gang are on a vacation to Australia. On a cruise ship that was invaded by creepy smugglers. But okay, these things happen. They decide to check out something called the Vampire Rock Music Festival. Does it come with a real vampire? As they travel along the Australian outback, they discover the vampire and his pack of wolves, the children of the night if you've seen Dracula. They arrive at Vampire Rock and we're introduced to the Hex Girls, some of the most iconic characters in the franchise, first appearing in The Witch's Ghost. We get a backstory on some missing musicians, and it's time to solve another mystery. So is this movie better than Monster of Mexico? A little bit. The story is padded in places, but this one is more engaging, and if you're interested in seeing if the vampire is real, and you like the Hex Girls and the throwbacks to the classic Scooby-Doo show, this one could work for you. This one isn't bad. 3 out of 5. Before we wrap up this episode, I want to have a quick look at one more. This October, my wife and I have been doing the Halloween Movie Challenge. Never heard of it? It's simple. You do 31 movies in 31 days, similar to the Christmas Advent calendar. They can be old, new, classic, obscure, big blockbusters, or giant pieces of garbage. As long as they're considered at least part horror, you're good to go. Early into the marathon, after indulging in Nightmare Before Christmas, one of my wife's favourite films, I decided it was time to watch something I missed out on.
Scooby-Doo and the gang may have finally met their match. Conjure up the ghost of a 300-year-old witch, and it's going to take more than a box of Scooby snacks to send her back to where she came from.
This film came out in 1999, 24 years ago, and like I said earlier, until this point, I had never seen The Witch's Ghost. Thinking about this review and the two not exactly great subjects we've already looked at made me realise, now's the time. Obviously, I don't own the movie, but thankfully the internet came to the rescue. As the film started, I said to myself, please let it be good. Thankfully, I didn't have to worry. Witch's Ghost is really good. It's by far one of the most engaging Scooby-Doo films ever made. I don't think it's quite on the level of Zombie Island or Cyberchase, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely more entertaining than these two. If you've seen the film, you know how good it is, but if you missed it like me, the gang meet a famous author, he invites them to his hometown, his ancestor was a witch, her ghost is haunting the town. Cool. Also, the Hex Girls are there. They play kick-ass music and the lead vocalist is a Wiccan. That'll be important later. If you enjoyed Zombie Island, you'll more than likely enjoy this follow-up. There's just something more satisfying about those movies where the monsters are actually real. And what about Alien Invaders? Maybe next year. When it comes to Scooby-Doo, stick with whichever movies work for you, whether it be Zombie Island, Cyberchase, Alien Invaders, or the first two live-action films. Whatever you like, sit back and enjoy those meddling kids. Alright, now let's talk Christmas. We've looked at Looney Tunes, Thomas and Friends, Singing Kettle, The Muppets, and for some reason these things. In all these years, we haven't done Disney. Well, let's change that. Let's talk one last time about a TV show I used to watch as a kid.
From downtown Main Street, it's Disney's House of Mouse.
House of Mouse was an interesting show. It's one of those you'd have to see to truly appreciate. The title tells you nothing, so it took a few years before I gave it a chance, but by the end of 2003, I was won over. If you haven't seen the show before, here's a quick rundown. Mickey and his friends run a popular nightclub for Disney characters ranging from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs to Cusco from The Emperor's New Groove. Most episodes have a gimmick that relates to the plot, normally centering around a staff member, including Pete the Landlord, or a specific guest at the club such as Timon and Pumbaa. Despite basically being an excuse to air certain Mickey Mouse shorts from the 90s, it was a great show and I highly recommend it. And like almost every animated Disney show, it had a Christmas special, Mickey's Magical Christmas, snowed in at the House of Mouse. I own it on DVD, so hopefully that means it's good. Then again, if we remember last time, I owned 2 copies of a crappy Scooby-Doo movie, so anything could happen. Before we look at some festive cartoons, I want to give a quick acknowledgement to the only other piece of House of Mouse physical media, Mickey's House of Villains. The case is in Portuguese, which means it more than likely came from the same place as those animated masterpieces. I will forever love these, and I am overjoyed to have them back. I mean, just look at how great they look together. And look at the content, filled to the brim of classic cartoons from the golden age of Hollywood. Documentaries, commentaries, historical content not seen in decades, Toonheads, The Bugs Bunny Show, old television commercials, random stupid shit that exists for no reason. In my 23 years of collecting DVDs, these will forever be the best. I may own a lot of TV shows, but I owe everything to Looney Tunes. So anyway, back to this thing. The case itself is Portuguese, but the disc is in English. The reason for this is because I have no idea. Going back to Looney Tunes, despite the content being in English, every single one of those DVDs have Portuguese text on the discs, so fuck if I know.
Ooh, it's a Houseketeer Halloween! So grab your garlic and get set for America's Most Haunted. He's Count Mickey Mouse!
Welcome, my children!
Anyway, it's Halloween at the House of Mouse. So if you want some Disney cartoons during October, there you go. As I was saying, it's Halloween, lots of villains show up, Mickey shows some retro spooky cartoons and some modern stuff relating to the season. 2/3 of the way through the movie, most of which has been dedicated to almost non-stop cartoons, the villains decide to play a trick on Mickey and they take over the House of Mouse, complete with a musical number. Pete's there, but he doesn't really do anything important. Come to think of it, neither do the rest of the villains. All they do is show more cartoons, just swap Mickey for Jafar as host. Mickey puts on the Fantasia costume, takes a lamp from Aladdin, traps Jafar inside, the end. No, really, that's it. This is such a nothing movie. The majority of it is just a compilation of Disney shorts, and the plot with the villains is almost non-existent. But if you love Mickey Mouse, you might enjoy this. I guarantee this won't be the only time I say that in this episode. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to the main-ish event. A Christmas movie. So after a festive Christmas Eve show at the House of Mouse, the gang prepare to close down for the holiday season. There's just one problem.
We're snowed in.
Well, this is a fine predicament.
Aw, it can't be that bad. Aw, no.
Fortunately, Mickey has an idea. Let's throw a big Christmas party until the storm clears up. Everyone loves the idea. Except one. Donald just doesn't have the Christmas spirit. Nothing a Christmas tree, some fancy decorations, and some Christmas-related shorts can't fix. You get to see Huey, Dewey, and Louie build a snowman, Mickey and Pluto decorating their house, a story about the Nutcracker, Chip and Dale torturing Pluto from inside a Christmas tree, and of course a terrific adaptation of A Christmas Carol featuring Scrooge McDuck.
Spirit, whose lonely grave is this?
Why, yours, Ebenezer. The richest man in the cemetery.
So how is Mickey's Magical Christmas? It's decent. The storyline involving Donald is wafer thin, and there is almost zero character development. By the end of the movie, he's still pessimistic about Christmas. Mickey has a conversation with Jiminy Cricket. He asks Donald to put a magical star on the Christmas tree, and that's it. That's all it takes to put a smile on Donald's face. Whether or not this movie works for you depends on how much you like the Christmas shorts and the characters featured. If you're a massive Mickey Mouse fan and you're watching once a year at most, you should be fine, and if it's not doing that much for you, the whole movie is only an hour long, so it'll be over before you know it. For the final rating in Video Memories, I give it a very good 3 out of 5. It could be better, but it's still an entertaining watch for the Christmas season.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
Well, we made it. 99 episodes across 6 years. And God knows how many VHS tapes and DVDs covered. Some were great, some not so much. Some were full of nostalgic joy, and some were nothing short of tedious garbage. So before we turn out the lights, let's do one more. Back in 2017, I reviewed a series of movies I proudly declared my favourite movies of all time. It's been over 20 years and I love Back to the Future, the classic trilogy of movies starring Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly and Christopher Lloyd as Dr. Emmett Brown. I own so many copies of them, they require their own section. VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, and if we count Prime Video, that's 7 versions of these movies. Pinocchio ain't got shit on this. And believe me, if I could have them on Betamax, Laserdisc, CED, and VCD, I would. If that's not movie love, I don't know what is. What is harder to love are those old reviews. They were poorly written, rushed, and I used crappy VHS footage. I can't close out Video Memories without remedying this. So for one last time, let's talk about some movies loved all over the world. To briefly cover my feelings towards the movies, Part 1 and 3 are tied for my favourite, and Part 2 trails just below it. The way I see it, if Parts 1 and 3 are 10s, Part 2 is a 9. It's still an excellent movie, but it doesn't quite make it. Part 3 has a great time period in the Old West. It has some excellent music cues, and of course it has one of the greatest climaxes in movie history. And if you love seeing Doc Brown get a happy ending, this is the one for you. That being said, the original film is just so iconic, from the original story to some great action sequences. Without this, the sequels would not exist. If you only have time for one film, watch this one. My earliest memory of Back to the Future dates back to 1997.
Time-travelling movie adventure for all the family. First on BBC One, Michael J. Fox is the generation-jumping Marty McFly in Back to the Future, Part 3.
I didn't see much, I was only 3 years old, I barely knew what I was watching. All I saw was a man in a cowboy hat sitting in a car on a railway track with a train speeding towards him. The next thing I remember is the opening scene of Back to the Future 2, quite possibly from a TV airing in 1999.
Marty! You've got to come back with me. Where? Back to the future.
And then finally, the trilogy is released on VHS in 2002, and this was my first proper exposure to the series. Evidently I enjoyed it because this would only be the beginning of my history with Back to the Future. In the original reviews, I covered the VHS versions. Time to talk about the rest of them. We're going to start with a brief look at the recordable shelf. On VHS tape number 10, we have Car Crash, The DeLorean Story. Released and taped in 2004, this documentary looks at the controversial rise and fall of the DeLorean DMC-12 and its creator, John DeLorean. Now, I'm not one for automotive-related documentaries. The only reason 11-year-old me taped this from TV was the expectation of it being Back to the Future related. In reality, you get just a few clips from the first movie, a very brief interview with Christopher Lloyd, and a snippet of Back to the Future the ride.
I'm gonna take a little joyride.
With extraordinary vision, DeLorean saw riot-strewn West Belfast not as a hindrance, but as a glorious opportunity. He was going to build a car in a state-of-the-art factory, make a lot of money, and have his name mentioned in the same breath as Enzo Ferrari and Ferdinand Porsche. He almost succeeded.
I'm sure it's not a bad documentary. If you're interested in the history of the famous car itself, this might work for you. But if you're interested in something Back to the Future related, you best keep looking. The documentary is an hour long, and the franchise takes up barely 30 seconds near the beginning. Moving more in the right direction, but still building up, we have the Back to the Future trilogy novelizations, each one's release coinciding with their respective films. I rediscovered these recently, and yeah, they're in bad shape. I read these a lot in high school, and they are great. They're more or less straight adaptations of the movies, although they do deviate in places and actually include elements that will be addressed in later features, such as George's mother being named Sylvia and Doc Brown's dog in 1955 being named Copernicus, which would later become canon in Back to the Future 3.
It's all right, Copernicus. Everything's gonna be fine.
So yeah, these books are pretty rare, but if you love the movies, I highly recommend them. Now, back to the main feature. The VHS tapes are more or less all the same. They each have one of the movies, a promo for E.T.
The pirates are out to get you. Don't let them brand you with their mark.
And some horrifying bits about video piracy. It may be a serious subject, but these ads were fucking overkill. The VHS tapes were bought on eBay for the original reviews, but next we have the 2002 trilogy box set on DVD, and this is my original copy from 2002. I'm missing the disc for part 1, and parts 2 and 3 are scratched to death. Hardly a surprise. As a kid, I never took care of my DVDs. Outside of the movies, each disc is packing excellent bonus features, ranging from behind-the-scenes documentaries, both old and new,
Action. Marker. This film was about time.
deleted scenes, outtakes,
It's just me.
storyboards, and trailers.
From out of the west, in a cloud of dust, a thunder of hooves, and a mighty...
Great Scott. I know, this is heavy.
These DVDs absolutely do not disappoint. Even checking them out for this video for the first time in many years was a jolt of nostalgia.
Marty, you've got to come back with me. Where? Back to the future.
Precisely on schedule.
I suspect the discs sustained damage early on, because in 2005 I picked up another box set called the 4-disc Ultimate Edition. Ultimate. That's funny. The first 3 discs are exactly the same as in the last set. What's new is disc number 4, dedicated solely to mostly new bonus features for all 3 movies, including new audio commentaries, documentaries featuring Bob Gale, an interview with Michael J. Fox,
shooting this movie in Pasadena, and these people came by, these location scouts, because there's this great neighborhood where everybody shoots.
Excerpts from the original Back to the Future script from 1980, and even a music video for Huey Lewis and the News. Even if you own the original DVD set, this set offers enough to keep the fans happy. For 10 years, this was my go-to source for Back to the Future. But then, when I moved into my first house, my dad bought me a Blu-ray player, and with it came the Back to the Future 25th Anniversary Trilogy. Unfortunately, these discs had to be replaced. Over the years, they got more wrecked than my original DVDs. As far as I'm concerned, these are the best home media releases Back to the Future has ever had, ranging from visual quality, menu presentation, navigation, and bonus features. On the Blu-rays, you get the same bonus features.
Time travel has always been fascinating because...
But new to these discs is the multi-part documentary, Tales from the Future.
And, you know, when I started studying film, I realized that telling a time travel story in a movie lends itself to doing it probably better than in any other medium.
One of the best documentaries relating to these movies I have ever seen. Also featured on the Blu-rays are scene-specific commentaries from Bob Gale and Neil Canton.
It's okay, I know CPR. I know CPR.
Hey, what's CPR? You!
No, kids, that's not what CPR is.
They could have left the series there, but nope, there had to be more. There was the 30th anniversary set, released in 2015, just in time for the events of Part 2.
Alright, Doc, what's going on, huh? Where are we? When are we?
We're descending toward Hill Valley, California at 4:29 p.m. on Wednesday, October 21st, 2015.
And 5 years later, in 2020, they released the 35th anniversary on Blu-ray in 4K. As of this video, I don't have a 4K TV, so if there is any visual improvement, I can't experience it or judge the quality of it. What I do know is that, apart from a degree of visual clarity, the 4K version has almost nothing new. The bonus features are all carried over from previous releases, but now with a severe downgrade in terms of overall presentation. As for the Blu-ray version, there is actually a new bonus disc, featuring content for a museum exhibit, some old audition tapes, a behind-the-scenes look at the Back to the Future musical, and some fake commercials for hoverboards and Jaws 19.
Join the air pollution with the hoverboard. Air's no longer for just breathing, bruh.
So if this is enough to intrigue you, sure, buy the new set. Otherwise, I'd say you're fine with the 25th anniversary. And that's the movies covered. Time to cover some additional goodies. The centerpiece to this collection is this VHS LED lamp. As a sucker for LED lights, I couldn't say no to this. I bought one for Back to the Future and one for Jurassic Park for my wife. It's okay. It's cheaply made, so it's not super bright, and when the battery starts dying, the quality suffers even more. But when it has a fresh battery, it looks really cool. Next, there's Back to the Future, the animated series. This is a cartoon that aired on CBS in the early 90s. It's an interesting show, not quite on the level of quality as the movies, but it's worth a watch at least once. You get live action segments with Christopher Lloyd, you get some bits with Bill Nye the Science Guy, and Dan Castellaneta is a great Doc Brown.
Whoa! Heavy!
Heavy indeed! 2,796 pounds to be exact. After all, there's a car in there.
And then finally, we have Back to the Future the game. I played this when it came out on PC in 2011, and I loved it.
If my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
When it came to home consoles in 2015, I had to get it. As far as I'm concerned, this is as close to a Back to the Future 4 as we'll ever get. The gameplay is pretty easy, but the game has a lot of personality and charm.
Where to, Doc?
Mr. McFly, thrill me.
And that's it. We're done. It's been one hell of a journey. We've covered some good releases, some bad releases. Some were iconic, some you may have never heard of. Some were brand new, some were older than me. Some were super expensive, some were practically bargains. Some have great packaging, some were The Simpsons. Some were bought specifically for a review, some were bought for artwork. Some were bought as space filler, while others were bought simply for nostalgic joy. Some were fun to review, and some were nothing short of tedious. Some have stood the test of time, while others are a product of their time. Some of them I have owned since childhood. Some my family members owned. One of them I took from a family member. I still don't think it was a good trade. One of them I borrowed from a friend and never returned. It's not stealing, I swear. Some still play in excellent quality after multiple decades, and some have faulty audio tracks. At the end of the day, no matter what it may be, I'm just a guy who loves telling stories, and what better way to do it than with some media relics from my childhood. I thank you for joining me on this long journey. This has been Video Memories. I have been me, you have been you, and this is me saying thank you and good night.